Hilchos Shofar v'Sukkah v'Lulav Perek Shishi. The laws of Shofar, Sukkah, Lulav, chapter 6. Today is the last day that we're focusing on the Sukkah. We spent one chapter talking about the structure of the Sukkah. We spent the second chapter talking about the covering of the Sukkah. Today we're going to talk about who needs to sit in a Sukkah and how. How do you fulfill the mitzvah of sitting or dwelling, living in a Sukkah? So the Rambam begins, Halacha Aleph, Noshim va'avodim uktanim pturim min ha-Sukkah. Okay, this is classic. Women, slaves, children are exempt from Sukkah. Typically, every woman is always exempt from mitzvat ha-seisha azman grama, any time-bound positive mitzvah. Slaves are subject to the same laws as women, and children are exempt from all mitzvahs till bar mitzvah. So they don't have to sit in a Sukkah at all. Of course, if they want to, they can, but they're not obligated. Tumtum v'androginois. Tumtum is a person with a blocked genital area, so you don't know if he's a male or a female. Androgynous is a hermaphrodite. He has both reproductive organs. Chayavim misafik. They are obligated to dwell in a sukkah out of doubt. We're not sure what we consider them, male or female. Similarly, if somebody is split personality, he's half slave, half free. He was owned by two partners. One of them freed him. So he's half a slave, half a fully fledged free Jew. Chayav, so he's obligated to dwell in the sukkah because of the half of him that's free. Katan she'enoi tzarich le'imoi. Once a child is old enough that he doesn't need his mother, shehu kiven chomesh kiven sheish, about 5-6 years old, he's a little bit independent. Chayav basukkah midivrei soifrim kedei lechanche b'mitzvahs. He himself is obligated to dwell in the sukkah rabbinically in order to educate him to do mitzvahs. Here again we see the Rambam stressing that it's the child's obligation, even though we usually understand that the father is the one who has to be mechanech. A father is one who has to educate his child. Nevertheless, as we've spoken about a couple of times in the Rambam, and the Rebbe explains this at length, the father's obligation is to make sure that the child fulfills the mitzvah in the perfect manner. So in that way, when the father helps the child do what he has to do, the child can himself become michuyav badavar, become somewhat obligated. Beis, so here we have a kid. 2 kids doing the mitzvah of Sukkah on the Sukkah mobile from Chabad. Beis, chaylim u'mishamshein pturim min ha-Sukkah. Sick people and their attendants, the people serving them, are exempt from Sukkah. You're treating somebody in his bed at home. He's dangerously ill. You don't have to dwell on the Sukkah even if you're the nurse. V'lo chayla sheyesh by sakana, says the Rambam even more. Not only if he's dangerously ill, ela afilu chash b'reishev, afilu chash be'einav, even if the sick person has a headache or an ache in his eyes, he doesn't have to dwell in the sukkah, neither do his attendants. Mitztayer, somebody who's in pain, pater min ha-sukkah, is also exempt from dwelling in the sukkah. Hu v'loi meshamsha, but over here, only the person who himself is in pain is exempt, not his servants. Ve'ezehu mitztayer. What is defined as somebody in pain? Zeh she'eino yochel lishen basukkah, somebody who wouldn't be able to sleep in the sukkah, mipnei haruach, because of the wind is too strong, or because there's flies or mosquitoes, or because the smell is too strong. That's already considered enough to make you in pain, and you don't have to dwell in the sukkah. Gimel ha'avel chayav basukkah. A mourner is obligated to keep all the laws of sukkah. He has to dwell in the sukkah. The Talmud says, even by Yom Harishon, even on the first day, the day that a relative passes away, where typically you don't even have to put on tefillin, but you have to sit in a sukkah. Some of the commentaries point out that, if somebody passes away just before a festival, the Chag stops Shiva. Mm-hmm. You don't keep the 7 days. So the only way you could be a mourner during Sukkot is if somebody passed away on Sukkot. Because the word Avel in Halacha is a description for somebody who's during Shiva, during the 7 days of mourning. But if the festival stops the 7 days of mourning, so in a way you're not really called an Avel. So it would have to be a case where somebody passed away during the holiday. You became an Avel during Sukkot, you're still obligated to keep the mitzvah of Sukkah. A groom, his attendants, and all the people involved in the wedding, they are exempt from keeping the Sukkah all 7 days of Sheva Brachot, all 7 days of feasting. Dalet, shluchei mitzvah pturim min ha-Sukkah. Somebody who is on a mission to do a mitzvah is exempt from Sukkah. For example, someone's going to save Pidyon Shvuyim, going to save captives during Sukkot. You don't have to keep sukkah while you're traveling. Bein bayayim u bein balayla, both by day and by night, because the entire time until you do the mitzvah, you're considered the shliach mitzvah. You're the agent of the mitzvah. Hoilchei drachim bayayim. If somebody is traveling by day, p'turim min sukkah bayayim, v'chayavin balayla. So he is exempt from sukkah while he's traveling by day, but by night while he's camping, you got to set up a sukkah in your campground. Hoilchei drachim balayla. If somebody is traveling by night, p'turim min sukkah balayla, v'chayavin bayayim. Opposite. They're exempt from sukkah by night, but they have to put up a sukkah by day. Shemrei ha'ir bayayim. People in the watchtower, they're watching the city. By day, p'turim min sukkah bayayim, v'chayavin balayla. They're exempt from sukkah by day, and they're obligated by night. Can you imagine if you had a watchman sitting in a sukkah by day? He can't watch anything. He's stuck in a sukkah. So while he's watching, no need to do anything. By night, you have to sit in a sukkah. Shemrei ha'ir balayla, p'turim min sukkah balayla, v'chayav bayayim. The opposite, if you're a guard of the city by night, you're exempt from sukkah by night, and liable, obligated by day. Shemrei ginesu pardesim, people that guard gardens and orchards, p'turin bein bayayim bein balayla. They're exempt by day and by night. They're always on the job. Sheim yasa hashemer sukkah. This is quite obvious psychologically, humanly speaking. If a guard makes himself a sukkah, yeda haganav sheyesh lashemer makom kavua. The thief who wants to break in will know that the guard has a specific place where he dwells during these 7 days. V'yaviv v'yignam min makom acher. And he's going to go and steal from somewhere else. That's obvious. If you know somebody is in a certain place, you're going to catch them on the other side. Hey, Ketzad hi mitzvahs hayeshiva b'sukkah. Okay, so now we know who is obligated in the sukkah. Now let's talk about the how. How does it work? What does it mean to dwell, to sit, to live in your sukkah? So the Rambam says, it's everything. Sheyeh oichel v'sheiseh v'dor b'sukkah kol shivas hayamim. You should eat, you should drink, you should live, literally, in the sukkah all 7 days. Bein bayayim u bein balayla, both by day and by night. Kederech shehudar beveisei b'shar yemeis hashana, in the exact same way that you live at home all the days of the year. So here you got everything. This guy's got his couch in his sukkah, his bed, his table, the whole business. V'chol shivas hayamim, here's the way to look at it. All 7 days, oiseh adam es beisei aray ve'sukkasei keva. You should make your house the temporary dwelling, and the sukkah your permanent dwelling. The sukkah construction should be in a temporary way, but the way you treat it should be a keva, a permanent dwelling. Shanamar, as it says, Basukkah teishvu shivas yamim, you should dwell, you should sit in the sukkah for the 7 days. Ketzad, what does it mean to treat your sukkah like a permanent dwelling? You put everything good in the sukkah. Kelim hanoyim umatzoyis hanoyis basukkah. Your nice utensils, your nice bed sheets in the sukkah. Uklei shesiyah, nashishes, v'koisais, things you use to drink, like pitchers and cups, basukkah. You keep it all in the sukkah. Aval klei achila, your eating dishes, like bowls and pots, chutz la sukkah. Those you can keep outside the sukkah. We don't mean you should move your kitchen into the sukkah. It's actually disgusting. It's not respectful to treat a sukkah with dirty dishes. Hamenoida, the lamp or whatever your light source, basukkah, should be moved to the sukkah. If it's a small sukkah, leave it outside. The Talmud explained because sometimes these lamps would be, they have a bad smell. Small little pottery lamps. So if it's a small sukkah and that's all you're going to see, leave it outside the sukkah and it'll light up the sukkah from the outside. Vav, oichlin, v'shaisin, v'yishenim, basukkah, kol shiva. We eat, we drink, we sleep in the sukkah all 7 days. Bein bayayim or bein balayla, both by day and by night. You're having dinner or breakfast. Doesn't matter. You're having a nap by day or sleeping by night in the sukkah. The osir lechel suda chut la sukkah kol shiva. It's forbidden to eat a meal, a full meal with bread, outside of the sukkah for all 7 days. Elohim achal achilas aray, unless you're eating what's called a snack, a temporary eating. Kabetza, a paches, a yeser ma'at, about an egg size, a bit less, a bit more. So for food, you get a little exemption.
If there is no bread, if you don't eat bread,
technically, you don't have to sit in the sukkah, but some of the commentaries say today people can have a full meal without bread. You have a steak and French fries and vegetables. So it'd be more proper to eat it in the sukkah. But at least, dryly, halachically speaking, you get a pass if you're having a snack. Ve'ein yeshenim chutz lasukkah afilu shnas aray. But sleeping is no pass. You don't sleep outside the sukkah, even if it's just a temporary sleep, even if it's just a nap. It's permitted to drink water and to eat fruit Somebody who is stringent about himself and doesn't even drink water outside the sukkah, hareza meshubach, then he is praiseworthy. But notice that in halacha, it's only praiseworthy when it comes to eating and drinking, to eat snacks in a sukkah. Sleeping, you must. And yet, the Rebbe has a whole talk where he talks about how the fact that his father-in-law, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, would do the opposite. When it came to eating in the sukkah, he was the highest level strict, not even water. And when it came to sleeping, he didn't sleep in the sukkah. How do we explain it? So he explained it Kabbalistically. One of the Chabad Rebbe said that in the sukkah, me'ir makifim de bina, this very high Kabbalistic light is present in the sukkah. So the Frierdiker Rebbe, he felt it. He couldn't sleep. And we learned before that if you can't sleep in the sukkah because things are bothering you, you're exempt. The Rebbe goes even further and he says, the mitzvah of sukkah is to live in the sukkah like you live in your house. Because imagine if in the previous Rebbe's house that would have shone such a light, he also wouldn't have slept at home. So in the sukkah also doesn't have to sleep. What about us? We don't feel the Kabbalistic lights. The Rebbe has a revolutionary talk where he says, a student who is so connected to his Rebbe will be in pain if he doesn't feel what his Rebbe feels. So we don't feel the Kabbalistic makifim, but we want to feel it. And that itself makes us in pain. So we don't have to sleep in the sukkah. Imagine that. Zayin. Achila beleila yom tevarishin basukah chayva. Eating should be done in the sukkah all 7 days. But on the first night of the holiday, it's an obligation. It's a mitzvah. Afilu achal kazayis pas yotza yedei chivasai. Even if you ate just an olive-sized portion of bread, you fulfill your obligation. That's the mitzvah. It's such a big mitzvah that the commentaries even today say that even if it's raining on the first night of Sukkot, you must go in, make kiddush, and have hamotzia even a little bit, even if you continue your meal later inside the house, but the first kazayit has to be eaten in the sukkah. Mikan ve'elach reshus. Afterwards, it's optional. Ratza lechel seuda soyed basukah. You want to have a meal, eat it in the sukkah. Ratza, if you want, ena eichel kol shiva ela peiris eklayis chutz lasukah eichel. If you want, you don't want to eat all 7 days a proper meal. You want to just have fruits or toasted grain snacks outside of the sukkah. No problem. Do that. Kedin achilas matzah b'Pesach. Just like eating matzah on Pesach. The first night of the Seder, you have to have matzah. Afterwards, you don't want to eat matzah? Good for you. Eat chicken. It's fine. But in the first night of Sukkot, you must sit in the sukkah. What if a person, like in this picture, not sure if it's so clear, but he's sitting in the sukkah, and the table where he's eating is in his house, or outside of the sukkah. And you're eating. Hear that. It's forbidden. It's as if you didn't even eat in the sukkah. You got to have your table in the sukkah. Because we're worried, there's a decree, you might get drawn after your table. Your table's in your house. And before you know it, you also end up in your house. Even if it's a big sukkah, keep the table in the sukkah too. All 7 days, you learn in the sukkah. It's a familiar picture. That's us learning Rambam in the sukkah. Because all 7 days you learn Torah in the sukkah. But when you go deep and you want to be precise and you want to analyze what you're learning, yavin chutz l'sukkah. That you can do also outside the sukkah. So your mind is calm. If you're doing a basic reading or a basic learning, that's fine to do in the sukkah. But you want to get deep involved, you can go outside of the sukkah. Hamispalel, somebody that's davening. Ratza mispalel basukah, oichutz l'sukkah. If you want, daven in the sukkah. If you want, do it outside the sukkah. Many communities have a custom to daven in the sukkah. Others have a custom to specifically daven outside the sukkah. And the Rambam says, you do whatever you want. Yod yardu geshamim. The big question. What if it starts to rain in the sukkah? What do we do? You're allowed to go into the house. Don't have to stay in the sukkah. When is it permitted to move from the sukkah to the house? How much rain has to come down? So the Rambam says, when such big drops are falling into the sukkah, that if they would fall into a cooked dish, the dish would become ruined. That's how much water has to be coming down. Even if it's a bean dish, then you can leave the sukkah. What happens in this case? You're eating a meal in the sukkah. Rain comes down. V'nichnas lebeisa. You moved into your house because it was such a heavy rain. Upasku agshamim. Then you look outside, and the rain stopped. Ein mechayvim ma'aseh lachzer lasukkah. We don't obligate you to return to the sukkah ad sheyigmar su'udasa until you finish your meal. In other words, you can finish your meal at home. Some texts have ein mechayvim ma'aseh lachzer lasukkah kol oiseh halayla. You don't have to go back that night till you finish your meal. Point is, that meal, once you moved inside, you have a license to continue it in the house. Once you're done the meal, now, if the rain stopped, you got to go back to the sukkah. What if you were sleeping in the sukkah? And rain came down. You went into the house to sleep in your bed, and the rain stopped. Again, we don't bother you to go back to the sukkah all that night. Stay in your house, sleep in your house, till dawn rises. Yud Aleph. You finish eating in your sukkah on the morning of the 7th day of Sukkot, the last day of Sukkot. Lo yatir sukkasai. Do not dismantle, take apart your sukkah. What you can do is take down your utensils and remove them from the afternoon and onwards. I guess in the Rambam's times, most sukkahs were built on the roof. So you take down your stuff into the house. If you have no place to remove your utensils, so how do you show that you're done with the sukkah? Decrease the space of the sukkah by at least 4 by 4 tfachim. Take off part of the wall, take off part of the schach. Decrease the space of the sukkah to show that you're done with it. Now, of course, if you have to have a meal the rest of the day, the 7th day of Sukkot, you must eat in the sukkah. The mitzvah is all 7 days. It's still part of the 7 days, you got to eat in the sukkah. Yud Beis, Kolz Man Sheikanes Leishav Basukah Kol Shiva. Anytime you go to sit in the sukkah, all 7 days, Mevarech Kaidem Sheyeshev. You make the blessing before you sit down. Asher Kichana B'Mitzvaysav Etzivanu Leishav Basukah. Hashem has sanctified us with His commandments, and He's commanded us to sit in the sukkah. Ubalele Yom Tov Rishon, on the night of the first day of the holiday, Mevarech Al Sukkah V'Achar Kach Al Azman. You first make the blessing on the sukkah, Leishav Basukah, and then Shechianu, because the Shechianu was also going on the sukkah. Umesader Kol HaBrachos Ala Kais. And you organize all the blessings, you say them over the cup of Kiddush. Nimtza Mekadesh Me'umad. So it turns out you make Kiddush standing. Umevarech Leishav Basukah. At the end of the Kiddush, you make the blessing Leishav Basukah. V'yeshev, and you sit down. V'achar kach mevarech al hazman. And then you make the blessing of Shechianu while you're sitting. In the Rambam's times, people made Kiddush sitting. So Leishav Basukah has to be made standing. So you make the beginning of Kiddush standing, Leishav Basukah standing, and Shechianu while you're sitting. Because there haya minag rabbeisai v'rabbonei Sfarad. That was the minhag, the custom of my teachers and all the rabbis in Spain. Lekadesh me'umad b'leil rishon shel Chag HaSukkos, to make Kiddush standing on the first night of Sukkot, Kamesh Yarnu, as we explained. Yud Gimel Bazman Hazeh. Nowadays, she'anu eisin shnei yamim tovim. We keep 2 days holiday. Yeshvin b'sukkah shmeina yamim. So we end up sitting in the sukkah for 8 days. U'vayom hashmini. But the 8th day isn't really part of Sukkot. Shu yom tov rishon shel Shmini Atzeres. It's the first day of Shmini Atzeret. You sit in the sukkah, but you don't make a blessing of leishav basukah. Is also the other people mentioned in the beginning of the chapter. Person's genital area is covered, hermaphrodite. They're only obligated in sukkah out of doubt. So la'olam ein mevarchim leishav basukah. They never make the blessing leishav basukah. Mipnei shein chayavin misafek ve'ein mevarchim misafek. They're only obligated out of doubt. You don't make a blessing if you're in doubt. Yudalid Gamar Milechel Bayem Ashmini. Once you finish eating on the 8th day, Moedid Keilav U'Mefanoi. So again, take down your utensils, clear the sukkah to show that you're done using it. Ein le'makar moherid es hakeilav. If you don't have place to take your utensils, imaysa katana. If it was a small sukkah, machnis b'menorah. Bring in the lamp that was outside of the sukkah all the time. Bring it in to show that you're done with the sukkah. If it was a big sukkah, machnis b'kederis u'ka'aris v'chayetze b'hen. Bring in some dirty pots, some dirty bowls. To remind you that it's disqualified and the mitzvah is over. Because it's holiday, you can't reduce the space, you can't destroy part of the sukkah. But you can bring something in which will show that you're done with the sukkah. Tesvav. If somebody didn't make a sukkah for whatever reason, by mistake, on purpose, you can make a sukkah, even though you don't usually do work on Chol HaMoed, you can build a sukkah. Even at the end of the 7th day. If that's the latest you can do it, Make a sukkah. Shemitzvasa kol shiva, because the mitzvah is to make it all 7 days. Atzei sukkah, wood that was used in making a sukkah, asurin kol shmeinas yamei chag, are forbidden to be used for anything else. All 8 days of the holiday, bein atzei defanes, bein atzei schach, whether the wood of the walls or the wood of the schach. It's muktzah, like on Shabbat it's muktzah, it's set aside, you cannot use it. We don't make pleasure, derive benefit from them for anything else, all 8 days. Because the 7th whole day, the sukkah is muktzah, set aside, till the end of the day, which is twilight zone. And twilight zone could also be part of the 8th day. Once it's set aside for the twilight zone of the 8th day, the whole 8th day becomes muktzah, so you cannot use it till after Shmini Atzeret. Also, if a person hangs fruit or drinks, liquids, in his sukkah as a decoration, he cannot use them for his own needs all 8 days. They just got to hang there. But if you made a stipulation when you hung them and you said, I don't want to relinquish my ownership, I don't want to remove my hand from them all of twilight zone as the holiday comes in, then you can use them whenever you want, because you never set them aside, and the holiness of the sukkah never settled upon them, and these decorations were never considered part of the sukkah, and so you can make use of them for all of the holiday.